Hello and welcome to round 8 of the Automobilista Australia Touring, or not Touring Car Cup, the Rookie Cup here at Velopark. Hopefully the stream picks up the game. Doesn't look like it's doing it at the moment, but yes, we are from Velopark. Obviously, it was host of round 2 of the Automobilista Australia Touring Car Championship. And we've just begun the qualifying session, and once again we've been joined by Scruff slash L Chief slash Matt Williams. How's it going?
Well, I don't have to take a slash, so that's a plus.
Certainly. So we've still experiencing these technical. Okay. We do apologise, guys, for this technical issues. Obviously, OBS, for whatever reason, playing up, but currently live timing has us with Termo has just jumped to the top of the timesheets on a 104.345. Brendan Ross only 5 thousandths of a second behind him, and Steve Bolger is 0.015 behind Termo, so very close at the top. And we've got Topher. He is 6 tenths down with Coulston in P5, 7 tenths down with Witt in P6, 1.2 down, Walsh 1.3 down, and Wayne Whitmore 2.6 down.
That's Wayne Whitmore. Sorry, Lewis.
Yes.
He's behind Brian Walsh and Shane Witt.
Yes, I do appreciate you correcting me on such a terrible mistake.
With such a terrible mistake.
Yeah, with such a terrible mistake. I'm trying to fix this issue. So currently people will be seeing a black screen. I do apologise, hopefully you can hear us.
That's a noble question that I should answer. I can confirm that you can hear us, our beloved viewers.
Yes, we do apologise once again. Might need to perhaps even close the game and start it again, unfortunately, just to get this going.
With your streaming apparatus, my failsafe in this situation is to use the display capture option and center it onto the game window. We have the absent Barnsey also confirming that he can hear us. And the present Luke Joyner, who is inexplicably focused on texting rather than qualifying. Brendan Ross currently top of the timesheets by 1.5 tenths. His fastest lap so far a 104.0. He's just ahead of Tomo and Steve Stoive, Bolger in third place. Gary Neville doing well up in fourth place, and at this point I am genuinely expecting you to tell me that we're in fact muted right now.
No, we're not muted. That's one thing I can see on OBS. Unfortunately, I cannot see the Automobilista firing up. So what we might do, I might bring up the old...
Oh, a amazing crash from Gary Neville.
So we'll just bring up the splash screen. I'll unfortunately have to restart my game and see if that does indeed help. But kind of got Steve Bolger setting a purple first sector at 21.4. He's currently in P2.
We've got Poiter just on his way out of the pits for the first time at the session, leaving it very late here in qualifying.
Decent middle sector from Stoive, but not as quick as Ross's. So we'll see how he goes in this final sector, which contains obviously the final chicane and the tight left-right at the end. And he does a purple time, so 103.8. So he jumps up, and Brendan Ross down to P2, Termo P3. Gary Neville doing a decent job there in P4.
Brendan Ross has set a 103.8 in practice, which would have him just over half a tenth off of Stoive at the moment, so he'll be looking to replicate that lap time. Well, in fact, improve on that lap time from practice earlier.
I do believe I have Automobilista running again in OBS, so you should hopefully get some footage for those watching shortly.
The unfortunate viewers will no longer have to listen to us. They'll be able to mute the stream and just simply watch the on-track action,
which I'm pretty sure most people will probably be doing.
Anyone with any common sense, my good friend.
Certainly, so I've got no one really lighting up the timesheets at this time, although we did see Mike Coulson. He was pretty quick in practice, so he's one who's currently 9 tenths down that I wouldn't be surprised if he jumped up a couple spots towards the end of this session. We still have about 6 minutes to go here. And there we go, we do have footage. Currently looking at Glenn Miles in the Mamiya Motorsport 69 Mini Challenge vehicle. So I'll just see if we can find anybody on a lap.
Just had Glenn Miles set his first lap time, allegedly using a new wheel, so we'll be probably trying to adjust to that, but hopefully it brings much fortune along with it.
Bit of added speed too. He did seem to be a bit more comfortable in the practice session. He said I think a 106, I believe, low 106.1, which isn't too bad.
Just had Poiter move up into the second place, sorry, with a 103.9.
So he was another one to look out for. He was one of the top 2 fastest in practice. He's looking quite handy once again.
Yeah, good pace last time out from Poiter. He'll be hoping to continue that on, and looks like he's doing so. He's definitely off to a good start here in qualifying.
Well, he's up on his personal best in the first sector at the moment.
Just under 5 minutes remaining, and we now have everyone having set a lap time.
It's Stoive, purple middle sector, decent first sector. What can he do this time around? He does improve by 3 tenths to 103.559, so that makes it a little bit more difficult for Poiter.
And Gary Neville in 4th place, having a very good showing here.
Ooh, and Bruno, or Poiter does improve, but 3/100ths off. So not quite enough.
Ross has just completed another lap, unable to improve, I believe. I don't currently have the timing up.
No, it didn't improve on that time around. We've got Gary Neville up on his personal best in the first sector. So we've got Stuyve being fastest in the middle sector, and we've got Poiter being fastest in the final sector on their last 2 laps. Neville up 2/10. Should he find that or continue that 2/10 improvement, that will move him up into 3rd in front of Brendan Ross. Looks like a neat and tidy final sector.
Steve again going faster, not improving by as much
Gary
as time.
Neville improved massively. He found 0.2 of a second in that final sector, and that brings him to within 0.2 of Steve. And Poiter has jumped up by 5/100ths of a second to set a 103.4. So a change at the top.
Pressure really on Brendan Ross now as he makes his way out of the pits for what will likely be his final run, with just under 3 minutes remaining in the session now. Behind the top 4 we have Termo in 5th place. He's off to a decent start here. He'll be hoping to improve another few tenths off that and look for a good start in the race, I think. But I think he's very much in the decent chat here going on his qualifying pace.
He's looking alright so far, though he did understeer quite a bit wide there at turn 3. We don't want to run too wide there. Might have cost him a 10th or 2.
That's just about getting heat into the
And
tyres.
we see Steve jump up once again. So Steve, not done yet, a 103.369, jumps up into provisional pole position as we watch Termo circulate the circuit. And that was all done with a purple first sector from Steve. So, and he can go faster in that middle sector. He has done a couple 17.7s in the middle sector, and on that lap was a 17.8. So he's got time in his pocket. Should he?
Ross is around. He still has time to make it. He's just kept it out of the wall. He'll have time to make it back around and get a final lap in, but definitely not the ideal final run, going off almost immediately after beginning your lap.
Yeah, so let's just have a look what he's done here. Looks like he's done it at the first chicane. Yeah, he's just hit that sleeping policeman anti-cut thing. We did see a few people having troubles in the touring cars around that first chicane, and that's our first victim so far, I believe, in the minis.
It was definitely not the easiest part of the track in the touring cars. A few people going off there in the race, I remember, and thankfully it was actually significantly less in practice than in practice, if I can actually use my power of sentence constructing. But these rookies doing much better than we managed to in the touring cars.
Yeah, there certainly was a lot of incidents in that first chicane. I think these cars are obviously not going quite as quickly into the chicane, probably helps them. And the rear end of these cars isn't quite as loose through that first chicane as what the...
He's lost it again through there, Ross. He is not going to be able to improve on his lap time.
So he
back into the pits now, so 4th is the best he can hope for here.
Clifton improves by 0.7 of a second on his own time. That moves him up to 6th, and he's 2/10 behind Termo now. And then he's lost it at the first chicane, so that's starting to catch a couple people out now.
He'll perfectly through practice and progressively get worse. That is a interesting approach that I don't think will carry over from the rookies into the main series.
Well, I think people are just trying to obviously push that a little bit harder in qualifying. You see Brian Walsh off in the background there at turn 6. I think they're just starting to push a little bit harder now that we're in a qualifying session, and they're just finding out the limits. Well, they might have been a little bit more conservative in the practice session. So it looks like Joyner is about to abort the lap he was on, and Brian Walsh has, and I believe that's everybody done. Yep,
A few
everybody.
cars driving down the pit lane for no good reason.
I suppose it is to serve, obviously, to practice pit entry. There are compulsory pit stops in these Rookie Cup races, so
I had somewhat forgotten that they could very well just be coming into the pits rather than trying to leave the pits.
yeah. So we'll just go over the final qualifying order before we take a short break. We've got Stuyve Bulger in pole position on a 103.369, and we've got Poiter on a 103.469, exactly 1/10 behind. Then we've got Gary Neville doing a good job in P3 on a 103.795. The only three drivers in the 103s. And then we've got championship leader Brendan Ross in P4, Turmo in P5. Mike Coulston, he'll probably be a little disappointed considering his pace in practice, but he'll start P6. Topher, P7. Luke Joyner, P8. Brian Walsh, P10. Shane Witt in P10. Wayne Whitmore, P11. And Glenn Miles in P12. So we will take a short break as we conduct the driver's briefing, but we shall be back soon. welcome back. We've had the drivers briefing, we've had qualifying. Now we're just waiting for the first race to begin. We've got 5 minutes left of the warm-up session. And, well, I figure it's a good time to bring up the championship standings. And as you can see, Brendan Ross, last time out, not having a good time. And he only leads now by 10 points.
Yeah,
So,
Brendan Ross definitely French fried when he was supposed to pizza, and anyone who watches South Park will love that joke, and everyone else will be very confused.
yeah, so obviously he won the first race at Taruma, but DNF, and well, he made numerous errors in that last race at Taruma when he should have pitted.
If we spent about 4 or 5 laps at the end just yelling pit.
Pretty much begging him to pit. He didn't pit, and he had multiple spins and offs, and that dropped him well down into 13th place. And obviously, even though Stoiv couldn't capitalise on a win in either race, he's now 9 points behind. So he's all to play for, with obviously 4 races and 2 rounds to go. Behind that, we've had Gary Neville have a very consistent season. He hasn't had a podium since the second round. And but he's still just been there or thereabouts, picking up points at every race, except for obviously Yakarapagua, where he was not present, and a 12th place there in round 4 at Velocita. Aside from that, very consistent, obviously 4th, 5th and 6th there. He's had a good run. And then Shane Witt, obviously he's been up and down, obviously got that second there at Spielberg, and see 4th and 5th as well. And he's joined on points with Luke Joyner, who's only been here for 3 rounds. We see a couple seconds, 6th, a 5th, and a couple 4ths at the last race at Taruma. Obviously, the battle at the top, obviously, it was all going swimmingly for obviously Brendan Ross. Up until that Spielberg round, obviously he wasn't able to make it, and that sort of killed his momentum a little bit, even though he did get that first win back at Taruma. But he did have I believe it would have been about 50-point lead over Stoiv coming into, I think, the Taruma round. So he has caught up quite a bit. And once again, Stoiv didn't grab his usual pole position here. But, oh wait, no, he did. My mistake. But Ross didn't have the greatest qualifying session. He does look a little bit off the pace here compared to obviously compared to previous round scruff.
Yeah, he'll be hoping that Stoiv gets off to one of his usual more difficult starts, and apologies for the sudden drop in audio quality from my microphone. But yeah, Ross will be hoping that Stoiv has a difficult start and can get ahead early. He has been quite good off the line as Ross, so he'll be hoping that.
Yeah, certainly, obviously, Stoiv in every race he's done. Well, except maybe at the last round, I do recall he did get off the line well in one of the races, but the rest of his, about halfway through that first lap, he just started to drop down through the field. So obviously the first lap, he's sort of got to find his way a little bit quicker in the races, and he'll probably be right, because once he does get to the front, he does tend to stay there. It's just when obviously he has those poor starts that he does tend to struggle a bit. So he'll be hoping to get a nice clean getaway, have a nice clean first lap, and then he'll probably do pretty well. Obviously we have Poida being pretty quick. They're only separated by 1/10 of a second, and really come down to obviously the last minute there with Stoiv nicking pole position in the end. And with Poida, obviously he's shown some very good pace, but he does seem to wear out his front tyres quite a bit with his aggressive driving style.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that from a few of them, just tearing their tyres up and having to pit early and then doing the exact same thing again, and winding up with several laps at the end where they're on pretty much driving on rims. So there's a couple of drivers to watch out for in that aspect who'll be quick at the start and then drop back a little bit, and hopefully they will learn to be a little bit more patient after the first lap or so.
Yeah, that's it. So that probably, a little bit more patient on that first lap for a couple of them, and obviously a couple of them just need to be more patient on their tyres in particular, especially those front tyres.
There's a way for guys like Steve and I guess everyone who does struggle with tyre wear in these cars, there is a certain formula to race starts that if you get it right, you can make up positions on the first 1, 2, or 3 laps, and then you can back off and just pick your way through the rest of the field from there, whether that be by attrition or just by having a couple tenths on the people around you. But that's one of the reasons we do have this series again, as we probably say all too often at the start of these broadcasts, is that this series is here for people to learn these aspects of their racecraft, and I think for the most part it is definitely doing the job. We've seen across both series a lot of people, the newcomers, really improving in the second half of the Rookies Cup series, and I don't think this one's been any different, and I think the next one will be exactly the same again.
Yeah, we obviously saw in season 1, particularly in the second half of the year, we saw Brendan Ross sort of take the mantle as one of the better obviously Rookie Cup drivers, and he couldn't quite bring the championship home last season, but he's in a good job to obviously do it tonight, or not tonight, but this season, having been the fastest runner for the majority of the season. And then we have seen obviously a couple other drivers throughout the year, like obviously Brian Walsh at Yukera Pagua. He had a fantastic run, was even in a podium slot to towards the end of the race before a mistake cost him. But we have seen a couple of these guys sort of, the more they've raced in these Monday night series, the more they've obviously got more confident in their driving abilities, and they've been able to obviously improve their racecraft around other cars as well, and it's translated into other series, which is good to see. And well, as we say every week, it's what this series is here for.
Yeah, Brian definitely has seen an improvement since that unpronounceable round. Obviously, still not getting that podium, but he's a lot closer than he has been previously as we get underway with the formation lap.
Certainly are, and we've just run through the grid. Scruff, you can run us through the first half, and I'll run us through the second half.
Well, in pole position, we have Steve Bolger after his very late lap in qualifying. I've already forgotten the time, but I know it was an excellent one. I've hit the wrong button. In second place, we have Poiter. He not getting out of the pits as early as he maybe would have liked in qualifying, but a strategy that worked for him. Third place is Gary Neville, a great qualifying session for him. He is starting third from Brendan Ross in fourth place. A little bit further down than he'd like. Termo in fifth, solid qualifying for him. Sixth place is Mike Coulston, and I can't remember how many people there are in the service, so I'm just going to hand it over to you now.
No worries. Well, we've got Topher in P7, Luke Joyner behind him in P8, Brian Walsh P9, Shane Witt, not the greatest qualifying session for him, he's down in P10, and then Wayne Whitmore in P11. Behind him, although ahead of him on track at the moment, I believe, is Glenn Miles in P12, and Coops missed the qualifying session, but was in practice, must have had some kind of issue, missed qualifying, but has made it for the race. So he will start P13. We're just about to form up onto the grid now. And let's hope all the drivers make it through that tight, twisty first chicane.
Steve will definitely be hoping he arrives there first, and I think we both would agree with that.
I think it would be good for the championship if he could just close it up just a little bit more and make it a little bit more tight. But we got 1 like 2 like 3, 4, 5. And we are underway.
Looks like he's got a good launch off the line there, has Steve.
Poiter's got a slightly better start, but he's around the outside. Gary
Rod's
Neville
getting away well too, but he's been boxed out a bit there by Poiter and Neville.
Well, looks like one of the 55 car he's just on the grass, Topher, but he's held onto it. And looks like we're all through safely through the first 3 corners, which is good to see. And currently got Poiter all over the back of Steve Bolger,
who runs a little bit wide there, and Brendan Ross up into 3rd place.
Certainly has, and Neville's just a little bit further back now. As, Neville from a long way back has a look up the inside at the chicane. Not quite far enough, but he gave it a good crack, that's for sure.
Difficult spot to get it done the slower the cars get.
And Neville's now got Turmo right behind him. Turmo's driven in all the, well, since he's joined Automobilista Australia, I believe he's only driven in the Monday night series, but he's done pretty well for himself of late. In the touring cars, he seems to handle himself quite well.
Yeah, he's definitely come in and has looked strong in the series he has competed in. I'm pretty sure you're right in saying that he's only been in the Monday night series, as Bolger has a half a second lead after lap 1 from Poiter, and Ross a further 4/10 back, although closes in on Poiter by 2/10 in that sector.
He's all over the back of Poiter at the moment, although that said, looks like Poiter got a good run through the flip-flop there, and has dropped Ross just a little bit. But
not easy to get the run through there. Especially in these front-wheel drive cars. We found that in the touring car series, and I believe it was Topher who knows how uncomfortable it can be being behind someone if they don't get quite the right runs through there.
Yes, I believe there's a bit of an incident there in the touring car races. Obviously, you got to be patient on that first right-hander. You can't run too wide, and you got to try and set up that left-hander onto that back straight there. Because if you get that wrong, you're vulnerable down that back straight and into the chicane.
So top 3 are closing up. We've still got Ross about 2/10 behind Poiter, who's in turn closed in about 3/10 and is now a quarter of a second away from Stoiv.
Well, this front 5, they're only covered by 1.7 seconds, so it's very, very close at the moment. And I'd probably say out of all of them, Rossi probably at the moment looking the faster of the lot.
Stoiv has responded though.
That said though, Topher with the purple first sector so far on this lap, so he's the fastest, albeit it's only by 1/100th of a second.
Now, interesting thing with Topher that I noticed during the driver's briefing is I couldn't hear the sounds of Dandenong, so it appears as though he may actually be racing indoors at the moment, which is definitely a rare thing for him and could explain his recent form if it's been going on for a while. Obviously without the sounds of drug deals and murders going on around you, it is much less of a distraction.
Well, perhaps it might have even distracted him. Perhaps the sound of gunshots in the background sort of helped him concentrate. As Steve set the fastest lap and has then lost it at P3, so that's dropped him back to P5. Poiter says thank you very much.
Very lucky that didn't turn into an incident there. They were swerving each way to get around him and be very lucky to get through.
Well, it's really similar to my own incident in the final section of the supercars where I looped it in the penultimate right-hander and blocked the track. And I was hopeful. I was just waiting for the dreaded crunch. Didn't come, thankfully, but certainly wasn't ideal. But no damage done there, although it has dropped him back 6 or 5 spots after setting the fastest lap of the race, and he was building a little bit of a lead.
Yeah, he'll know he has the pace and just needs to get his head down here and not try and overdrive the car to catch these guys ahead.
Well, perhaps...
still within 5 seconds of Poiter in the lead at the moment, so...
Oh, he's very wide at the first chicane there. He's lucky not to get a bit airborne over the anti-cuts there. It was a Steve.
Oh, with the style points, perhaps he's unlucky not to get airborne.
Perhaps. And, well, for his sake, I think Steve might be an idea for him to probably take a chance maybe and pit earlier than normal, get yourself in clear air and obviously some fresh tyres for a while and try and get track position, because I don't think it's going to be too easy to pass around here if you don't make a mistake.
Yeah, the top 5 or 6 are all relatively even on tyres, so probably a few laps away from it really giving an immediate advantage. Although the clear air could be helpful, they might want a bit more of a gap to the slower guys at the back.
Well, the pit stop length along here, around here, is pretty big. It might even drop him a lap down. So a pit stop will put him at least 50 or 40, at least 40 seconds, I'd say, behind the leaders. So it could be a viable option.
Upon review, I've decided to reword my previous sentence. I did say the slower guys at the back, but let's be positive, the less incredibly fast guys. As Brian Walsh gets a drive-through penalty, he's...
Just try and find out where he is. Car number 27. Oh, is that a spin somewhere?
Yeah, unlucky there to get one this early in the race as well, because...
So he must have gone over the chicane a couple times, and obviously that time he went
runs
round.
wide there again.
Just outbroke himself there. And another spot to get it, we did see a couple of the guys in the touring cars at the chicane in the middle sector.
Walsh off again and has gone back across the track and is off again. He must have some damage on that car. Very unlucky at this stage of the race to have that penalty though.
It doesn't look like he's got damage, so...
Any further cuts though will result in extra drive-throughs.
Well, I did see the message come up again, so I don't know if he even got it. He might have even got another one, perhaps. Hopefully not. But,
so come in to serve that and cut the pit entry.
But back at the front, Ross has not let Bruno get too far away. Gap's only 7/10 of a second. Gary Neville 1.6 seconds adrift of the leader. So he's hanging around as well. And they've got a 1.3 second gap over Turmo, and now looks like Bolger into the
sorry,
pits.
Walsh is actually stopping here. He's taking his pit stop, which means he'll have to come through the pits again, because obviously this will not count as serving his penalty.
Yeah, so hopefully he realises that and obviously serves his striker on the next lap. Otherwise he might find himself disqualified.
He'll be hoping not to have a second drive-through penalty and have to come through the pits 3 laps in a row.
So,
back underway now, slowly out of the box, but moving now. I suppose in these cars, slowly is quickly.
So, on that last lap, Turmo was the fastest of the front guys, setting a 1 minute 4.0, and Topher behind also a 1 minute 4.0, but all those in front of him, so Poiter, Ross and Neville all set 104.4s or 104.6s. So now that gap, it's starting to close down a little bit. As Gary Neville runs a bit wide and looks like, is he going into the pits? No, he's going to continue on.
Ross doing a great job in second place here. He's not let Poiter get away. Perhaps just being a little bit more patient than we've seen from him before. Or absolutely pushing as hard as he can. Let's have a look at the tyres. No, it looks like he is definitely taking a more patient approach to it, as he's normally one of the harshest on his tyres, especially in the early stages of his stints.
He's just set his personal best for the race. Looks like Gary Neville got a track cut. And Topher also sort of matching the leader with a 104.1. So this top 5 is closing in. So just have a look at the sectors that Steve is putting in. Have a look at the middle sector. His first sector obviously a bit slow because he's exited the pits. And Wayne Whitmore setting personal best laps on that tour. And Steve hasn't had a middle sector pop up yet. No, there we go, 18.2. So that's not ideal. In fact, he's the next car down the road for the leader, so obviously a pit stop does take quite a long time here. It's a very long pit lane, and it takes a while for the pit mechanics to change the tyres in this thing.
Yes, we have Brian Walsh now serving that drive-through penalty. Hopefully he just decided that while he had the penalty, he may as well take his pit stop as well, and hasn't completely screwed himself, and also hopefully this is his only penalty he has to serve, which it looks like it is.
Yeah, so once again, fastest man on track that time around was Turmo, and you can see Brian Walsh exiting the pits just amongst this battle, and right in front of Gary Neville. He's trying to get out of his way, and he gets out of the way for Turmo as well. So heads up driving from Brian Walsh to get out of their way without causing too much of an issue.
Not really many opportunities to get out of the way on this track. Obviously, the straights work, but
Termo's now side by side with Neville. He's going to try and go around the outside, and if he pulls it up, he'll get it. He can't quite do it, and Neville takes the position back. Sorry to cut you off there, Scruff.
that was definitely better than anything I have to say. As we have Topher taking a dive on Mr. Walsh.
Looks like he may have even been a little bit of contact there. Walsh probably should lift off and get out of the way. See, he's a lap down.
He does so now. Termo clearly being held up by this scrap with Neville. He did a 1 minute 5.8 on that lap, which is 1.8 seconds slower than his fastest at the race.
Looking at the lap times, Bulge on that last lap a 103.8, while Puida and Ross 104.5 and 104.4, and obviously Neville, Termo, and Topher all being slowed down a little bit by obviously battling and traffic. And probably should Bulger not make a mistake, he should jump up at least up into P3, I believe. So he's in for a good shout to move up a couple of spots.
Gary Neville in the pits as Brian Walsh gets another drive-through penalty.
Gonna have to have a look and see what he's done here.
Yeah, it would be for a track cut in the final cornery bit. I don't know what. It's an interesting one, that final corner. It's a hairpin chicane.
Might have even done it in the chicane. We see Coops is now going through the pit lane. So you see Wayne and Luke having a little battle there for P8.
Wayne making... Sorry, Lewis, you go ahead.
Well, Steve on that last lap wasn't quite as quick, set a 104.3 compared to a 104.5.
Oh, sorry, there's contact between these two. A little bit of a nudge going to the first corner. That has sent Wayne across to the inside. That will definitely result in a track cut for him.
Did well to hold on to that actually, and thankfully obviously the anti-cut bumps there didn't send him skyward. We've got P8, so Gary Neville, Mike Coulston, Topher and Termo and Brendan Ross in the pits while Puida is continuing on. So it's going to be interesting to see where obviously Termo, who's
Luke Joyner coming in too, sorry Lewis.
Yeah, so there's another one in the pits. All the pit stops happening at the midpoint of the race, but it will be interesting to see where Steve filters out. It's probably a little bit too far back to pass Ross in the pit stop sequence, but he won't be too far away, that's for sure.
So, good idea from Joyner to come into the pits on this lap too. He was behind Whitmore and those two were racing quite hard, obviously making contact into turn one. So he'll be hoping to get the jump through the undercut.
And, looks like Rossi is getting underway, but the pit lane exit line is right at the end of the straight here. So he has to wait agonisingly to turn the pit lane speed limiter off. And just find where Steve is just crossing the start-finish line now. And he's set the fastest lap at 103.5, so it's going to be very close between them. So just try and find Rossi exiting between turns 3 and 4. So Ross will hold on to it for now, but
Brian Walsh serving his next penalty.
But Steve pitting early. Master Stroke has moved him up.
We have Puida in the pits. Race leader is in the pits, currently getting tyres put on that car, and he's underway again. Will be interesting to see where he comes out.
Well, he should filter out back into the lead, unless he had a slow run into the pit lane. Looks like Whitmore will take the lead. He does. Ross exiting the final turn with Bulger.
This could actually be quite close with Puida still travelling through the pit lane.
Yeah, he might even, it'll be very close actually. He still hasn't been able to, there we go, he's able to turn his pit lane speed limiter off now.
Be careful on exit here.
They're going to be side by side, turn 4, and he just holds on. Ross not quite enough there.
Definitely closing in though through the pit stops there. That couple of laps on fresher tyres has done Brendan Ross a hell of a lot of good there.
Certainly has, and he's got an okay run through the flip-flop.
Moves to the inside.
Was only darting for that position, but was Poiter gets a bit sideways, but then looks like Poiter broke a little bit early and sort of forced Ross to go to the inside a bit, and then obviously Poiter getting a little bit sideways. This is great for Bolger behind.
Ross is looking like through those chicanes he did have the better run, but obviously not really possible to do anything through there other than very early on the brakes.
Certainly. So currently Whitmore leads. It was said in the driver's briefing, and he's a new runner that's obviously pit stops are compulsory, so hopefully he does pit at some point, otherwise he will be disqualified from the results. Looks like Ross very quick at the moment, although he's taken the narrower line through these corners, which seems to obviously not favour him as well as the wider lines that Poiter is taking.
It's looking as though it's working out for Ross quite well though through those corners. He runs a little bit wide there. I don't know why I made that noise.
That
but
will be a track cut too. And they're coming up to Brian Walsh in front. So Walshy letting them through. Yes, there's a track cut that time around for Brendan Ross. And Poiter setting his personal best of that lap, a 38 or an 103.9, I should say.
We have the leaders very close again here. Looks like Ross did have the run, but was just unable to find himself a way through. He's got the inside line here, having hit the brakes through this wiggly bit.
He needs a good exit here. Looks like he's got a decent
like he's got
line.
it.
And Poiter knows
Poiter
it.
straight to the inside there.
Yeah, it goes
That's
defensive
something
nice.
Oh, he's gone back to the outside, giving Ross a look, but unable to make the move done. He's very late on the brakes there.
Oh, and Poiter just cuts him off there. But no contact made, thankfully. And Wayne Whitmore continues. He's got 5 laps to pit, otherwise he's going to find himself dead last.
I keep forgetting that this series has 2 qualifying sessions rather than the reverse grid, which is getting annoyingly confusing. So a little bit of breathing room now for Poiter from Ross to the tune of about 0.6 of a second as they cross the line.
And despite their battling, Bolger isn't making too much headway at the moment. That gap between Ross and Bolger, 2.8 seconds, and it sort of stayed around that gap the last couple laps. So he'll be hoping that Ross and Poiter battle a little bit harder, as it looks like Wayne Whitmore goes through once again.
And these guys, while they are battling, are closing him down at a fair rate too.
About 3 seconds a lap, 3 to 4 seconds. So should he pit on the last lap, he might even come into play. It looks like Poiter ran
Ross
a little
is
bit
closed
wide.
up. He could have to run down here into turn 1.
A little bit of a bump draft there, and he pulls out. He's going to have a look. We're told you have to be ahead 200 metres to go into this first chicane. But Ross heeds that, and it's going to try and pass. And Poiter holds on.
I'd say that was a genius bit of backing out of it there from Ross.
Possibly. Or it could have ended in disaster, and Poiter could have been on his roof, as he saw many, including Ross, at the Gold Coast last night.
Ross does look quicker through those corners. Whenever there's a change of direction through a series of corners, he does look like he has the edge. Through the rest of the track, they are fairly even.
They are.
This looks like he's changing direction a little bit nicer, just a little bit crisper.
Well, that said, he can't quite get the exit. It looks like they come up to lap Glen Miles. Yeah,
he got the exit there. He's very strong out of that final corner, but he seems to be a little bit too far back by the time they get down to turn 1 for him to be alongside in time.
I think his best bet is going to be into the chicane on the back straight, but the line he takes sort of compromises his exit through that flip-flop at turns 5 and 6. So he's got to maybe change his line a little bit.
Poiter is locking up a lot though, so he's using a lot more tyre.
Well, you can just see his steering lock, especially through that right-hander. He's using a lot more than Ross, so perhaps we'll see his tyres come into play later on.
Ross did pit a few laps earlier though, so currently Poiter does have the better tyres, but they're getting very close now, under 5 seconds to Wayne Whitmore.
Well, Whitmore is entering the pits, so
that is a hell of a relief.
We won't have to just qualify another driver. And we're getting a better exit out of the final turn this time around, and it's looking a lot more comfortable. As you see, Glenn Miles with a penalty. So what has Glenn Miles done here? He's cut the chicane, has he?
Ooh, big lock up there from Poiter. Not close enough for Ross to capitalise on it. It does look like it's cost him just a little bit as he started to open up a bit more of a gap.
And the gap to, obviously Stuyve's tyres have sort of died off a bit because he's now 4 seconds behind this battle, and these guys have been battling as Ross runs wide there. So perhaps running longer was the better strategy here. Obviously, for Stuyve, it worked to get him in front of Topher, Coulston and Neville, but it hasn't got him, obviously, too close to Ross and Poiter in this second half of this race.
Ross closing up again under brakes there, too far back to even bother feigning to the inside. See what the gap is as they cross the line. It is 0.65 of a second, so about a tenth faster for Ross in the final sector on that lap.
And Stuyve is about 5 tenths slower on that lap. 4 tenths, so he's dropping time to these guys. So that spin on the second or third lap there really has cost him. Because
sorry, let's you go on.
It forced his hand strategy-wise in that he sort of forced him into pitting early to avoid traffic. Where I think you probably want to run to midpoint at this race, as Poiter has shown.
Looks like Topher's had an incident through the first couple of corners on the lap. He crossed the line a couple of tenths behind Gary Neville, and then came out of there a couple of seconds, well, several seconds behind, with one side of his car winking at me.
Yes, going through the first chicane, he was right behind Gary Neville, who made a slight mistake, and to avoid hitting Gary Neville, he sort of had to get on the brakes, which unsettled the rear end and put him into the fence on the other side, and that's given him obviously significant damage to the front right and possibly even a puncture. So unfortunate for him. He was just trying to avoid the car in front, and he's obviously damaged his car badly enough that it's forced him to pit. And now we've got Ross right behind Poiter. So Poiter's made a mistake somewhere when we're looking at that replay, and he's right behind him.
Yeah, Joyner and Witt are also within a second of each other. Looks like Joyner has the advantage, able to pull away in the final 2 seconds. Looks like
Ross going up the inside, down the back straight. So to cut you off, he's going for the lead. Bit of squeezing going on there from Poiter, and now Ross just has to pull it up. He does.
Oh,
Poiter gives him a bang in his passenger door. But Ross into the lead with... this is the final lap, so... He's done it with 3 corners remaining, got the run where he needed to get it, and he will cross the line to win on the last lap. Brendan Ross takes the win in race 1, a fantastic race with Poiter finishing in P2. Stuyve will finish 5 seconds adrift. He'll be frustrated with that mistake, and he puts it into the wall immediately, crossing the start-finish line. And Gary Neville, solid P4. And we have Mike Coulston in P5. Termo will cross the line in P6. He did a nice job, albeit a little bit lonely. Luke Joyner moved himself up to P8 after that battle with...
P7 on my screen,
yes,
sorry.
P7. He was having a battle for P8 with... can't remember who it was, but...
Shane Witt finished just over a second behind him.
And then Coops, he's moved up 4 spots. He finished in P9. His fastest lap wasn't too bad there from Coops, so he'll be hoping to put in a decent showing in qualifying and get a better result in race 2. Wayne Whitmore will finish P10. He led about a good portion of that race, good 5 or 6 laps, and did a solid job. He finishes in P10. Topher looks like he's struggling to get around the track with the front right severely damaged. I think he must have hit the wall again. Either that or they haven't repaired the damage and he's just cruising around to get a finish. Yeah, he hasn't hit anything. That thing is just busted. So he'll finish P11. Brian Walsh, P12. He had a couple of penalties, and Glenn Miles, he suffered a penalty and then he subsequently DNF'd later on. So a bit disappointing on his behalf. But Brendan Ross taking it down to the final lap. Was obviously very patient there for quite a while behind Peter, and when the moment came, he didn't shy away from it, got the good run, and got it done, and took the win on the last lap.
Yeah, it was a great race there from Ross, obviously after the difficult qualifying session that he had, starting 4th place after really not seeming to have the pace throughout qualifying. He's come through to take the win after a mistake from Bolger, who early on I think we both expected to drive away with that race, but working in the favour of his championship rival, and a great drive there at the end.
Certainly, obviously Steve was sort of forced into that obviously to pit early on, obviously with that spin, and it sort of forced his hand early in the running, and so he had to pit early to move up a couple spots. Otherwise, it would have been difficult to pass Topher, Termo, and Gary Neville on track. So he did the right thing, but obviously he ran out of tyres towards the end of that race because he did have the speed. He did set the fastest lap, I believe. I think he set a 1 minute 3.5, while I think Bruno's fastest was a 4/10 slower. So he did have the pace. It's just he's got to utilise it better. So he got the first part right. He finally got the first lap right. He got the start right, and then bowled it on the second lap. So it's one step at a time, I suppose. But that's why this championship exists.
Yeah, they're definitely also giving us a good show to watch. So glad that I get to commentate on these guys every fortnight. That's about all I really can say after race 1. Look, of course, as that's generally when we get the bigger packs, as everyone's got a bit more of an idea of where the track goes, and obviously it's the track group is reset as well as the servers ticked over, and people get caught out a little bit more, so it does tend to throw a few things up race 2, but generally you see the same few protagonists at the front, which is another word I've been wanting to use for a while.
Well, there you go. You finally be able to chuck it in. But yes, obviously, with the track rubber being sort of wiped away a little bit, we do see drivers being caught out, but it's there, obviously, to sort of teach drivers that, okay, the track's not as rubbered in. You've got to adjust your braking points, adjust your lines, and just drive it just a little bit smoother and just a little bit smarter, as opposed to, okay, track's rubbered up, I'm just going to chuck it in and brake it 100 metres and we're going to be good to go. But we'll just take a short break as we will tick over to qualifying for race 2 shortly, but we shall be back in a minute or two. hello, and welcome back for qualifying for race 2 of the Rookie Cup, round 8 here at Velopark. So, obviously race 1 winner Brendan Ross took it down to the final lap, was patient, bided his time, and obviously Peter gave him the right opportunity, not quite getting the exit right, coming onto the back straight, and that was all Brendan Ross needed to take the lead. So what will we see this time? Obviously, Bolger got pole position in the first race, and Peter wasn't far behind, but obviously Ross did show a good turn of speed as well, so he'll be hoping to improve his qualifying performance this time out, while Bolger will be hoping to match his qualifying performance from the first race.
Yes, I agree with everything you just said.
Yes. So currently, just got Wayne Whitmore out on track. Actually, I believe Termo is the furthest one out on track and will start his lap first, so let's try and skip to him if we can. There he is. No, he's not. My mistake.
Brendan Ross has left the server with his issues, so not good news for our championship, possibly leader. I've already forgotten the standings.
Yes, championship leader Brendan Ross, who did extend his points lead in that race. So, just follow Peter as he goes through the first sector. Obviously, Ross did join or leave the server in practice while we were having a short break, and then came back, and he was just lucky enough to make it back in time as we ticked over, and he joined just beforehand. And as soon as it ticked over to qualifying session, he had a mismatch, so he was told that he could change it after qualifying.
The word is that the game would not let him on track with that error.
Well, it's quite disappointing. I don't know how he got himself a HDV mismatch. I'm assuming he's in the same car, but obviously just one of those AMS things, unfortunately, that's has sort of robbed us. As well, Bruno's lap didn't count, so he got a track cut somewhere. Gary Neville currently the fastest out there on track at the moment. 22.2 first sector and 18.4 middle sector. Shane Witt not too far away either. Luke Joyner currently the first time 105.5, and Witt just faster, and then Gary Neville 3/10 faster than that. So we will see the times be probably a couple tenths down on the obviously the first qualifying session. As you see, Gary Neville taking an interesting line through that first chicane. I believe that will be a track cut.
It'll take these guys a few laps to adjust to the lower track grip as well, before the times do start to get a little bit more representative.
Yeah, it's something we will see obviously throughout qualifying and throughout the race. Obviously the track will evolve into a better state as it goes on. Bruno jumps up immediately and a 104.5, so not a bad lap time at all.
My live timing is the most delayed thing on the planet right now.
Topher jumps himself up to P3.
It's almost a minute out.
Might need to refresh that, I think.
Oh, that's much better. We're within 45 seconds.
Termo setting a purple first sector, and he's up in the middle sector, so he's doing alright so far. This final sector looking good so far, nice and clean.
After being on the pace in the previous qualifying session, he looks to be getting off to a great start here as he gets a 1 minute 4.5, and
he's done it.
That was Bruno, I do apologise. And by Bruno I obviously mean Boyder.
And Termo, very good lap there, purple in all sectors, just by hair. And that's all he needed. He's 104.375, 1/10 in front of Poiter.
Fair gap back from Poiter to Gary Neville at the moment, but again, these guys are just coming to grips with the conditions again.
And obviously we don't have Brendan Ross out there due to obviously the technical Automobilista issues, which unfortunately has plagued him. So, and Turmo down at the moment in the middle sector, so we'll have a look and see if we can find anybody else. We've got Gary Neville in P3, but he's stuck in a bit of traffic at the moment. So let's see what Steve Bolger can do. He set a purple first sector. Topher setting a purple middle sector, so Topher looks like he might jump up if he can nail the final sector. So we'll see what Bolger can do, and then we'll have a look at Topher. So Bolger crosses the line, second, just in front of Poiter, 104.5. And Topher must have aborted his lap.
Bolger probably would expect him to have gone to the top early on here. But second place, nothing to shake a stick at, which is something our regular viewers will know I love saying as often as possible. Haven't been waiting to say that one. The Glenn Miles, Croops and Mike Coulston currently yet to leave the pits with just over 8.5 minutes remaining in the session.
Well, just speaking of Steve Bolger, he's currently up. He's 1/10 up on the pole time, 2/10 up on his own time here. The final sector has looked okay, but I'm not sure if he got a track cut in that middle, in that chicane there. He crosses the line, doesn't improve, so he lost time either way. His time did count, so he didn't cut it, but obviously lost out in that final sector.
Tomo also unable to improve. These two right behind each other on track, separated by about a corner.
And Poiter has just begun his lap, so we'll see what he can do.
Motorsport is the only thing in the world where a corner is a unit of measurement, as Bolger goes fastest through the first sector.
21.791. See what Fernando Bruno / Poiter can do. No, he's 4/10 down. So once again, Bolger up in the middle sector.
Tomo's got a track cut on this lap. I'm not getting any sector times for him through the first two sectors, as my voice appears to be going.
So Bolger out of the final turn. What can he do this time? Will he improve? He does. He goes to P1 by, well, pretty much a 1/10 of a second, a 104.277.
Whitmore with the fastest first sector. Not the fastest first sector, but he's on fire. In a positive way.
Well, he's 4/10 up on his own time, so that'll be why.
Nah, he's ruined it.
Did set a very quick first sector at 21.8, so that's nothing to scoff at. Less than a 1/10 of Steve's fastest time in the first sector. So what can Wayne Whitmore do? 105.5. So he lost, well, pretty much half a second in that final sector there. So he'll be a little annoyed with himself. Obviously, if he had found that half a second, he could be up, you know, good 4 spots. He'd probably be right with Shane Witt there, or at least between Witt and Neville.
Less than a 1/10 separating Bolger and Turmo. It's all on for a good qualifying battle for pole position here, with Poiter less than a quarter of a second behind these guys as well.
Turmo setting a purple middle sector. His first sector not too flash on that last lap, but his middle sector 17.884 is the fastest we've seen. So he's got to put this first sector together. Which, well, he's matched his PB, but he's 3/10 down on Steve. So he's going to work on anything. That first sector is where he'll need to work on. So he comes across a yellow flag, so someone's gone off in front of him. Looks like that is Ryan Walsh in the 27 red and white Mini.
Yeah, Walsh will be looking to improve on his time at the moment. He's currently about 4 tenths behind Wayne Whitmore.
Looks like he's struggling quite a bit at the moment. He has gone off a couple of times that we've seen on camera. Looks like we did see it in practice quite a bit, that he was just over driving it, just pushing, he's just braking, you know, good 20 to 30 meters too late, and it was on the throttle far too early. So he just needs to rein it in a little bit and straighten himself out, and he'll find that time again. But at the moment, he's just pushing too hard and just needs to regain focus.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things to adjust with sim racing, especially if you have done any form of real racing, because you don't have that sense of, oh god, if I don't hit the brakes now, I'm going to die. And you know, you obviously think the harder you push, the faster you go, but it really isn't the case, as I myself have learnt recently, and still struggle to actually remember a lot of the time. Put me in a racing situation, and all of a sudden, it's just balls to the wall.
Yep, and well, the first two sectors, well, Turmo improved in the first sector, it was only a 10th down, but in the middle sector he improved once again, it's less than a 10th off of Steve, so we'll see what he can do here in the final sector. He's not far off, and well, his lap time didn't count, so he must have got a track cut there. So we'll cut back to, look at Gary Neville actually, looks like he's on an okay lap at the moment. PB first sector, Shane Wynn in front of him also setting a PB first sector. What can Gary do in the middle? Only a 10th down on his own time, but 9 tenths off Steve's middle sector.
Gary will be very disappointed if he can't improve here. He started the first race from 3rd position, and Brendan Ross being absent as well means he's got 3 or 4 people who he did out-qualify in the first qualifying session now in front of him.
Well, we did see Coops wasn't there for the qualifying session for the first race, and we did see his fastest lap was a 104.5. So he did have a bit of pace. It would appear. He just obviously couldn't use it in the qualifying session. He's currently 3 tenths up. So should he continue this, Coops, he'll and if he nails a good final sector, he could find himself in front of Poiter if he can put it all together here.
Looking at the times again, Volga sitting around the 1 minute 4.5s. Turmo quite possibly just trying a little bit too hard to close that gap to him. Is in 104.9s at the moment, just doesn't seem able to get that lap in. We've seen he's very quick in that first sector when he gets it right.
Well,
22.0 through at that time.
They've both been out on the track for a little while now, so it might be an idea just to go back to the pits and chuck a new set on and apply what you've learned in the session so far and use that in one final run with a fresh set. And the way he took that chicane, he's probably found himself, even though he was down anyway, he's probably found himself with a track cut as he runs wide in the final turn. So this lap has been a disaster for Turmo. Steve, well, his lap time didn't count, so
if they came in now, they'd still be able to get out for one more flying lap on a fresh set of tyres, which is definitely desirable when you're fighting for pole position, and separated by less than a tenth, with Poiter only just over a tenth behind pole as well.
And Brian Walsh, he's improved on his last lap, improved by 6/10 of a second, and it's moved himself up to P9, so he did gather himself quite a bit there, and that's moved him up.
I believe it's Topher now has gone in front of Gary Neville as well, who's now down in 7th place. 2 spots up from the ever-improving Brian Walsh.
Yep, so we've got Coops, Shane Witt and Mike Coulson have just left the pits. And we've got Turmo in the pit, so Turmo's not going to go back out again. And Steve is continuing on, so... And Steve does improve a little bit. I have 800ths of a second there to 104 or 191. Well, he's just binned it now, and there it is. He's just redesigned the front end of that thing, and well, it's quite scary to look at. Once the front
we
end.
had Topher winking at us at the end of the first race, so I doubt it can make me quite as uncomfortable as that did. As we have Glenn Miles, I believe, off through the first chicane into the wall, parking it up. That is his qualifying session over.
So I've got Wayne Whitmore about to complete another lap time. Let's see if he improves this time around. It hasn't looked like too much of it now. It wasn't that great of a lap on live races, and he's got one more chance. I believe, yes, Topher will be the last driver to be able to set a lap time. Everyone behind him, when they cross the line, that is their last. That is them done. So, what can Topher do?
Currently in 6th place, looking good out there.
He's up 2/10 at the moment in the first split. So, should he find those 2/10 and hold it, he'll move himself up to P4. So, what can he do in the middle sector?
Does have Wayne Whitmore not too far ahead on track, so I'll be hoping that he doesn't catch him in this final sector.
It's up by 3/10 now. So all he's got to do is just maintain the current pace, and he'll move himself up to P4. It's probably
Looks like Whitmore's coming to the pits, so nothing there to distract Topher as he comes out of the final corner.
looked okay, so he should improve.
Coming up to the line now, and you forget how long of a run it is here. Up to 4th place there for Topher.
I was gonna say, I didn't say it, but I was gonna say Bruno was probably out of touch, just out of range, but fantastic final sector for Topher, and well, he's half a tenth off even P2, so a fantastic final lap at the death for Topher moves him up to P4, and I believe that was the last lap time set.
Yep, everyone now in the pits, waiting to go through to the warm-up session.
Yes, so just to go through, obviously, the results as we tick over into the warm. Obviously, Steve in pole position. And we have Termo doing a fantastic job up into P2. We've got Poida, P3. Topher moving up right at the death to P4. Got Coops, P5. Shane Whitt in P6. And Gary Neville, P7. Mike Coulston, P8. Luke Joyner, P9. Brian Walsh, P10. Wayne Whitmore, P11. And Glenn Miles in P12. But hopefully we will see Brendan Ross in P13.
Yeah, it looks like he's worked out his extra issue that he managed to pick up while he was away, where the game was, quote, not start-upping. And hopefully his issues are dealt with, as I implore you to take a break, as Brendan Ross has joined this server and appears to not have any mismatches, so that is good news for Rossi.
Certainly is. Doesn't look like he's got a mismatch at the moment, so that's okay.
Sounds like you are enjoying your lollies again.
Yep, eating a bit of chocolate. So, enjoying myself on that. Obviously, there may be a slight change in the qualifying order due to text chat during the qualifying session, so we will see.
It's an interesting one with these rookies. So we tend to have a smidgen more leniency during these sessions, as I try and think of the correct word and then say it in a very strange manner.
Yeah, we do give them a little bit more leniency, but we do want to see people obviously heed to the rules, and everybody has obviously said and agreed to on Facebook the post of the driving standards, where obviously chat is something that we do not tolerate during the middle of qualifying or race sessions.
Is anyone watching curious why that rule is in place? As it does occur to me from time to time, it does seem strange. Is we have had entire races and qualifying sessions before where people have had conversations via the chat who have crashed out, and it gets incredibly distracting for those still on chat. So we've just put in a blanket rule to ban that one.
Yeah, obviously once everybody's crossed the start-finish line and the race has ended, obviously, it's fine to chat. But or even on the grid before the race has begun, it's okay. But obviously, as the race is running and people are still obviously haven't crossed the finish line to end the race or qualifying session, yeah, we don't like having people obviously having a conversation. Obviously, it's once or twice where I know I've been on a qualifying lap, or I know there's been other people being on a qualifying lap and been distracted, where people have been saying, obviously having a conversation and you're going through a corner, you've got things popping up on your screen out of nowhere. It can be a bit annoying, and it's the same, obviously similar with obviously headlights being something that we don't like, except for when faster guys come up to lap traffic. For a lot of people, or for some people, the headlights cause a bit of lag and frame rate issues, which that itself, if someone's having frame rate issues, that can cause potential accidents, which we don't want to see.
One of the less endearing, for lack of a more broadcastable word, qualities that AMS does have with the headlight situation. I haven't experienced it myself actually anyway, but I haven't actually heard anyone say that they've got it in other games. So it's just one of those little things that keep you on your toes with AMS, much like the random mismatches for stock content.
Yeah, well, how anybody who was just in the server just before could end up having a mismatch and then, rejoin the server and having an HDV mismatch of all things, I have no idea. So that's just completely...
It's one of those things that makes Brendan Ross someone's hero.
Well,
He can just surprise you.
Rest in peace, Brendan Ross's championship hopes. It's all over. He's a hero again. We do. If we go back, obviously, to last season in the Rookie Cup, where Brendan Ross was announced as Matt Williams.
No, now that he actually he doesn't yet drive for my team, but as he has signed a contract, effectively signing his life away, he is property and therefore not eligible to become my hero.
Well, that is a lie, because you've just said that he is.
I said that's what makes him hero quality.
Yes, no, I'm sorry, but you've said that he is a hero of yours, so...
Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
So Brendan Ross can, well, that's his championship done and dusted. He's probably going to lose it in heartbreaking fashion once again, thanks to Scruff, so well done.
I hope a meteor lands on his house.
Jesus.
It's a good way to lose a championship, you gotta admit.
My computer was crushed by a meteorite. That's,
If you can do an interview after it, and you deserve to be my hero. It's a double whammy I've just put on it there.
Well, there you go. So, that's it. Rip Brendan Ross.
We've got a great habit with these warm-up sessions and our brilliant filler material of being muted for the entire thing, but I think we're covered tonight because neither of us has actually said anything constructive.
Well, that's it. Whenever we say something smart and intelligent, like, say, the championship, which I might as well bring up, just in case we do mute ourselves again. Obviously, in that last race, we had Brendan Ross win on the last lap, so that gave him 15 points, so he'll move to 130, and Steve finishing in third place, that will net him 10 points, so he'll move to, I think that's 116, so the gap 14 points with 3 rounds remaining. So he's going to need Brendan Ross to have a little bit of trouble in a couple of these races now if he wants a chance to win. He had the chance to close the gap, obviously, in the first race, put it on pole position, but yeah, once again, that mistake on lap 3 or lap 2 has put a serious dent in his championship hopes.
Yeah, still all to play for sure between these two. Less than a race in between it after race 1 tonight. So if Ross does, I got to use another one I've always used. If Ross does come a cropper, I'm pausing for applause from the viewers here. Then it will be a good opportunity for Bolger to close that gap in significantly, as I'm being attacked by a rabid dog.
Well,
And I've forgotten what I was going to say.
well, rest in peace to Scruff, being ripped to shreds by a bulldog.
The idiot is another acceptable word.
Yes. So yeah, like Bolger, really, to realistically have a chance, he's going to have to win. Yeah, he's going to have to win all the races and then hope Brendan Ross finishes P3. I think would probably be best case scenario for Steve at the moment. But to really get himself in it and to give himself some leeway for not having to win every race, he's going to have to rely on a bit of Ross misfortune. Obviously, he is starting at the back for this race due to the issues he's been having with one of those magnificent AMS random mismatches for stock content. But
With 13 runners in, what are you groaning at? With 13 runners in the server tonight, he is a chance for me to remember my sentence again. I'm not having much luck at the moment with that. With points going down to 10th place, Ross will have to really focus on being clean early on, not having any issues in the first few laps of the race. Otherwise, I'm just trying to put pressure on him here, if I'm honest with you, but there's a chance he could finish the race without scoring a point, and he doesn't want to do that.
well,
This
yeah,
battle is becoming much more violent between me and the dog.
you don't happen to have a webcam that you could share with the rest of the stream before we tick over of you and the dog going at it.
No, it's just no one wants to see my face. Well, if you want to, then actually look at my Discord picture. I almost said dick there.
Well, that pretty much looks like the same thing, doesn't it?
Does that mean your Discord picture is my dick?
Yes. You shoved it into the toaster and it got burnt. And then you uploaded it onto NBA 2K.
It would look more like an actual human being. As once again we managed to be professional for race 1 and have lost all credibility for race 2, which hasn't even started yet.
Yeah, still 25
Brandon
seconds.
Ross can shut his mouth.
We're still 20 seconds away until we tick over until the race session. So, yeah, just sitting here waiting.
It appears I've won the showdown.
And, well, it looks like the cat has gotten... Well, it hasn't got enough attention and wants to jump up onto my lap, so this will be interesting. And he's going to curl up into a ball, so...
Surely it's too warm for that, although cats don't really have that
Oh, it's not too warm
issue.
here, thankfully. But,
But apparently Brendan Ross's game has crashed. That serves you right for your comment, sir.
well... There might be a restart of the warm-up.
Ow. Claw in the kidney. If you're in the server and happen to be watching this stream, the wait for people to rejoin thing only works on Monday nights.
And obviously last night the supercars having to be restarted, that was due to obviously a couple of random
About
problems.
3 different technical difficulties all occurring in the space of about an hour and a half.
Yeah, so we
And having nothing to do with each other, and then all of a sudden colliding in the most spectacular of ways.
Yeah, so we obviously had Scruff's multiplayer ini, which has all the server settings and his profile, I believe, all just disappearing. So we had to find or redo all those settings, and obviously there's a couple
Still
that he missed.
had the multiplayer file, which I thought I could just create a new player file and then copy that back in and keep all the settings, which didn't work.
Yeah, so obviously that didn't work, and then obviously during the race, obviously about 18 laps in, we had stairs He had his game crashed, and he was doing the broadcast, so he had no broadcast. And then it was like, well, we might as well have. We do want these races broadcast, especially one like we had last night. Obviously, Gold Coast and Supercars being one of the more popular events, and due to the settings being reset and a couple settings that Scruff had missed when he was setting up the server that obviously were already well set on his other profile that had disappeared, it meant that Stairs could not join as a spectator again. So that meant we had to restart the race. So that is why that happened.
Oh, that was just awesome. Yeah, we do this for the adrenaline. Man, did I have some of that pumping?
So we do apologise, and obviously the reason why Thomas McMillan was not allowed back into the race is because he was already out of the race at that point. That is why. It's not because you're from iRacing or we don't like you, it's simply for the fact that at the point that the race was restarted, due to technical problems, you're out of the race. So if that had have been even myself or anyone else from Automobilista Australia, they wouldn't have been allowed to participate in the restart because they were out of the race at the time of the restart. I know obviously we're here for a bit of fun and a bit of racing, but that is obviously why you weren't allowed back.
We do put in hours of practice, so we do take it seriously, and like you said, we don't want to penalise or anything with anyone, but things are put in place under certain circumstances, and we do follow them.
Yeah, otherwise, if we don't follow said protocols, it'll just be anarchy, and when it is...
Every time it happens to anyone, we got to pretty much treat it the same way, and that's why we do it the way we do. Otherwise, we'd be restarting servers for 4 hours straight.
Yeah, so we've just begun the formation lap. We've got we'll go through the first half, and you can take us away for the second half. We've got Steve Bulger on pole position once again. We've got Termo doing a fantastic job there to get himself up into P2 for the second race. We've got Fernando Bruno / Poida in P3. Tofa doing a solid job in P4 right at the end. Coops doing another good job in qualifying. Missed out the first time out, but showed his pace second time out. And Shane Witt in P6. And Scruff has obviously died, so we have Gary...
He's forgotten to unmute himself. Gary Neville further down than he wanted to be.
Yes?
I already said that. Mike Coulston. 8th. 9th, Luke Joyner. I don't know where we are on the track. 10th place, Brian Walsh. 11th, Ryan Whitmore. 12th, Glenn Miles. And in 13th place is Brendan Ross, not currently having technical issues.
His game has not crashed and his computer has not melted onto his desk, so...
But has a meteorite landed on his house?
Perhaps that's why he crashed.
Oh, I mean, one can only hope.
That said, he's doing a fine job to make it to the grid. We're 1 lap, 2 lap, 3, 4, 5, racing, and it looks like Poita got a decent start there in P4. And he's looking to split Shane and Termo. A little bit of argy-bargy. Ross up a couple spots at the back there. But Steve once again leads us through. And Termo, a couple, looks like Neville and Witt off in the back there. Or wide at least.
Steve already has almost a second lead through the first split.
Poita and Termo, we're battling out. That's all we see. I think that's Ross off at the back. That's Ross off at the back, I think. It is
Ross off at the back, I think.
So we'll just have a look at the replay. Looks like he got caught. Might have got a nudge from somewhere. Yeah, it was too wide. Made contact with... oh, yes. So he sort of understeered a little bit into Walsh. Walsh ran into the 70 car, and then the 70 car, out of control, knocked into Ross. But it looks like Ross has avoided the barrier, so He shouldn't have too bad a damage there.
Got Bolger just finishing the first lap, 1.6 seconds ahead of the incredibly fortunate Poiter, who did not get moved to the back of the grid or pit lane due to his infringement, because we, in part, completely forgot about it.
I think we'll just give him a warning this time out. It wasn't said.
Yeah, we'll have some words with him after the race as I add another unnecessary H.
So we'll just have a look. He did manage to pass Termo, so into the back straight is
Looks like Glenn Miles had an issue. He's now behind Brendan Ross.
he is a couple of seconds behind him, and Ross is a couple of seconds behind Wayne Whitmore. Further up, we've got Gary Neville having a look at. Oh, sorry, Gary Neville being overtaken by Brian Walsh, but Walsh outbroke himself a little bit, couldn't quite pull it up, and now he's under attack from Mike Coulston.
Bolger now that lead over 2 seconds as they come up to finish the second lap of the race.
So this is what we expected to see in the first race.
Oh, they've closed it down at that final sector though, by about 4/10.
So possibly a mistake there. It's Hofer setting the fastest lap at 1:04.7. So you see Coulston, Walsh, Neville and Witt all getting it sideways through the first chicane. So they're pushing very hard at this early stage. Back at the front, Bruno working those front tyres very hard, and he's got Termo right behind him now.
It'll be interesting to see what Brendan Ross does on strategy after that first lap incident. They're currently 11 seconds behind Bolger, who again has that gap over 2 seconds to Poiter. So it'll be interesting to see if Ross does come in a few laps early to try and make a little bit more ground up the field.
Well, it would be easy for him, but that said, he won't have tyres at the end of the race, so it might be smarter as Bolger, 1:04.4, very quick.
Guys behind
around.
are faster in the final sector though.
Yeah, so he can't quite hook up that final sector, but he's faster throughout the lap. So, Termo very close into turn 3 there. Poiter looks like he's working those front tyres very hard. We have seen that obviously in previous rounds. It's one of his part of his unique driving style. He puts a lot of lock in, as we see there, through the right-hander and the left-hander. So his front tyres, I think, he's using all of them, and in the races where there's not as much rubber down, he does seem to struggle a little bit more because his tyres, he uses them a lot more, and the grip just isn't there, so he does use his tyres up a little bit more in these second races. So Termo's just got to be a little bit patient, and he should get him towards the end of the stint.
The gap now between these guys and our leader is over 3 seconds, but should come down again in the final sector as we've seen in the previous laps.
Purple first sector for Steve Bolger, 7/10 faster just in 1 second in the first sector.
Fastest lap of the race there, 1:04.1, as he actually has now hooked up the final sector, that gap out to 3.2 seconds, and looks like he's just going to keep checking out here.
I think all he's got to do now is probably just relax a little bit and just take it easy on the tyres, because it looks like these guys, especially Poiter in particular, as you see a yellow flag up, but something back there. There's a bit of smoke.
Coops.
Well, he's down 7 spots. You have Gary Neville behind him. Looks like the first chicane has claimed another victim. It has. He's lost the back end, and he hasn't got on the throttle. He's got on the brakes instead, and bang, rip front end, and that's got a fairly big ding on the front end. He's got Glenn Miles right behind him now, and he's struggling to get back to the pits.
So another spot for Brendan Ross though, who's now up into 9th place, just getting past Shane Witt as I began to say that.
And he's all over the back of like Coulston in front of him. Looks like he's going to have a go, and he is on the brakes late. But he's outbroke himself, and Coulston says, "I'll take that back. Thank you very much."
And Bolger may be just managing the gap now. It's stayed pretty much the same over the course of that though.
Was he about half a tenth faster as Rossi, having a look at the first chicane, but pulls out of it thankfully. Takes a lot of curb though. A lot of people locking up into turn 3. Very easy to do, but it's probably more so the unweighted rear left tyre just bouncing across the ground as opposed to the front tyre locking up.
Poiter has used a lot more tyre than Turmo behind
Well,
him.
both
Turmo,
Ross and Coulston wide. And, Witt wasn't quite close enough to make pay of that, but they're side by side going to the chicane.
Turmo just needs to stay patient here, and he should be able to get through him pretty easily towards the end of the stint. Or possibly even through the pits themselves, but they do have Topher right behind them, under a second between Turmo and Topher.
Yeah, Topher is closing in on that last lap. Turmo didn't set a time, so he got a track cut in the first sector, so probably at the first chicane, and Poiter setting a 104.9, while Topher a 104.6, so he did close that gap down.
Would we get a copyright infringement if we played the Jaws music every time the camera is on Topher?
Unfortunately, yes. So YouTube, thanks for ruining a good thing, and screw you.
Valid.
Unless perhaps you
Bolger
have a
has
keyboard
extended
inflated.
the gap. Oh, that could work. But Bolger has now a 5-second lead. And Turmo all over the back of Poiter here, and Topher right on the back of him now.
We've got Luke Joyner and Gary Neville having an almighty scrap, and Coops has got to drive through, so...
Screw them, we got 3 people going for second.
Yeah, we've got 4 people going for P7. It's spot fires everywhere. Turmo's got a good run, but not quite close enough at the first chicane. So we'll just have a look down the main straight. Looks like Ross has got a good run, and Ross is in front. So Ross up one more spot, up into P7 ahead of Mike Coulston. But he's got a bit of a gap in front of him to Luke Joyner and Gary Neville. But we'll just cut to Turmo and Bruno / Poiter and Coulston.
Drive through penalty.
That must be for a track cut, I'm assuming. Oh, we've got a bit of contact. That's Ross. That's Ross in the barrier. Ross in the barrier. So what has happened? So Coulston's outbroke himself. Looks like he made a little bit of contact. Forced Ross wide. Went himself off the track and cut the inside of the track out of control. Run back into Ross. Ross went way off the road. And then he slowly, well, looks like lagged into the barrier, and then they tried to go 3 wide through the tunnel, or the bridge section. And they were told specifically in the driver's briefing to take it easy through there. They didn't. I don't think any of them saw each other coming. There was a little bit of lag on Ross's part. Who was that car behind there? Trying to find out who that was. Wayne Whitmore Wayne didn't leave enough space for either of Witt or Ross, and he's just forced both of them to make contact. And unfortunately, Ross was on the wrong side of that, and he was put into the fence. So that has championship implications.
In the process of that happening, Gary Neville has got himself up into 3rd place. Turmo in the pits now. Rossi crying on Discord. Probably shouldn't be that harsh, but you know, I'm not nice. Poiter still in 2nd place, and Stoive with a 9.3 second gap as I look for other people. Ross sitting in the championship. Oh, that's just rubbing it in, isn't it? Sitting in the pits.
He's now a lap
Brian
down.
Walsh in, Glenn Miles off the track. Coulston driving, Turmo in the pits, Witt driving, Wayne Whitmore driving, Topher driving,
Well, Topher must have made a mistake, because he was closing in on Turmo and Poiter for that battle. So I'm just going to go through and have a replay and see what he's done here. So it looks like Turmo has outbroke himself into turn 3. Ran into the back of Poiter. There's been a bit of lag, and poor old Topher had nowhere to go as Poiter just drove straight onto the racing line, and well, that's damaged Topher's car, and that's why he's dropped down, and that's probably why Turmo pitted and Poiter keeps going. So it's been a bit of a mess this second race. We don't like to see some of this. We don't like to see some of this messy driving. We do want to see drivers leaving plenty of room and respect, but sometimes people do make mistakes. I don't think Turmo was trying to actually make a pass. He perhaps caught out by Peter in front of him braking a little bit earlier, or just missed his braking point by a metre or two, and well, that's unfortunately ruined a couple races there. So that means that Steve now, he's got a 10-second lead up front. And obviously Peter's dropped back, looks like he's going to pit this lap, and Gary Neville now, he's up to P3, and he's got a lapped Brendan Ross right behind him on track. And Wayne Whitmore, he's now P4, and Shane Witt P5.
Yeah, an awful lot's happened while we were both distracted looking at the replay as Brendan Ross gets a drive-through penalties to compound matters for him. But yeah, both of us quite distracted looking at replays of the Ross, Whitmore and other car incident, and missing out on commentating live the rest of the calamity.
Well, it was
12.752 between Holger and Neville out there at the moment.
Yeah, obviously Peter in the pits. Looks like Wayne Whitmore will jump up in front of him for now, as will Shane Witt. It looks like he has got his pit marker up, so he'll be pitting soon. Mike Coulston coming through the chicane. It'll be interesting to see where he appears. He'll probably appear 5 or 6 seconds behind Bruno. So Bruno gets going in P5. Coulston coming out of the final turn and crossing the start-finish line. So Brian Walsh is P10, Glenn Miles P11. Ross has to serve his penalty, and that's good. He was already 52 seconds behind 10th, which is the last paying points position. So that's going to move him a lap down on Brian Walsh.
We've got whoever that is, possibly even Brendan Ross.
It is Brendan Ross.
To unlap himself from Gary Neville. The key thing for Rossi here is just to get his head down, make sure he finishes the race, and hopefully capitalise on any issues for those around him. As Gary Neville runs off there through the first chicane, that'll be a track cut.
Hopefully he's slowed down enough. So Bolger keeps going. Neville looks like he's going to pit. He'll be grateful to probably... He was a lap in front of both Turmo and Ross there, so he'll probably be thankful now he doesn't have to deal with either of them, who looks like they would rather punt him off than safely pass him to unlap themselves. And Wayne Whitmore,
We've all thought it.
and Wayne Whitmore in P3, running very wide there.
Neville coming into the pits, as is Ross to serve his penalty.
And Witt is currently leaving the pits. Looks like Joyner will jump up to P5. He'll jump up in front of Witt, and he does. And Topher will also jump up another position. He'll jump to P6.
And we have our race leader in as well.
Oh, Brian Walsh. Bit of lag there. Don't know if he was trying to pit or if he just lost it there, and then obviously a bit of server lag.
Looks like, I believe it is Coulston in the orange car getting underway again after taking his pit stop.
So Coulston getting away. Looks like Brian Walsh will jump him. I don't know if Walsh is pitted yet.
Steve back underway now. He's got a little bit of traffic on exit with the guys who've managed to get out of the pits in front of him.
Wayne Whitmore takes the lead.
Once again, he's going to lead a few laps and hopefully remembers to take his pit stop again. It is his first time out, so these silly little mistakes may be a little bit more likely to just creep in.
Well, Bruno's setting his fastest lap of the race. I believe it might have even been the fastest lap of the race, but it's not going to be enough to dislodge Bolger from the lead. He was about 10 seconds behind him before the pit stops happened, so that's that sorted. So, and there it is, there's Wayne Whitmore into the pits, so Steve will retake the lead once he crosses the start-finish line.
Coming in early this time, so obviously realised that he wasn't quite able to make the gains by staying long in the first race.
Obviously his tyres probably would have gone off a little bit more as well, with obviously the track not being as rubbered up this time around. So at the moment, the closest battles on track are between Luke Joyner and Gary Neville, and then behind that, we've got Shane Witt and Turmo battling it out for 7th. Obviously, Turmo was running in P3 earlier on before that incident with Poiter, which dropped him down and obviously caused damage to Topher, unfortunately.
The gap between Poiter and Stoiv has come down quite a lot through the pit stops. It's now 5.5 seconds as they cross the line. It was over 10 seconds, I believe, before the pit stops.
Yeah, it was. Shane Witt going defensive into the chicane. Turmo right alongside. Looks like Shane Witt backed out of it and has allowed Turmo up to P6. So Turmo lost the back end on entry there and could have been a lot worse, but saved it. So he'll keep going, and he's got an 11-second gap to Topher in front, and Topher is 3 seconds behind Gary Neville. So Topher's got a bit of work to do if he wants to move up, and looks like Luke Joyner's dropped Gary Neville a bit since we last saw him a lap ago.
And Brendan Ross and Miles gets a drive-through penalty, likely for another track cut. I believe he's already had one in this race, so each additional track cut giving him another penalty now. Could actually give Ross a position and a chance at finishing in 11th place if everyone else manages to bring it home. He's 5 seconds behind Coops at the moment.
Yep. So Brian Walsh has done a okay job so far in the race. He did catch a slight mistake before, but he's up into 9th. He was running, I think, 10th or 11th a while ago, but he's moved up now to P9, 8 seconds behind Whitmore.
It's still key for these guys just to make sure that they do finish the race again with 13 people in there and the top 10 all scoring points. It really, you're never out of a chance of scoring at least a handful of points, so just going to make sure you get to that checkered flag regardless of how badly the race is actually going for you.
We have seen that a couple times where people have just kept circulating and picked up vital points when, even though they're well down the field, perhaps even a couple laps down, with obviously people DNFing in front of them. So, obviously at Bathurst, especially when obviously the field wasn't quite as big, we just saw people running their own race as opposed to pushing for 10 tenths for 81 laps and or 82 laps, and they got a decent result out of it because they finished. So something for these guys, even though it's a much shorter race, obviously. We have seen a lot of errors from a couple of key guys in this championship, so you never know. You could see one in the last 5 laps here. So you just keep going, keep pushing, and you never know what might happen.
Yeah, the pit lane transit time, as we've spotted, is quite a long one. So any damage, any penalties, whether they have to do a drive-through or a stop-go, it is worth a hell of a lot of time. So
we've got Gary Neville moving up in front of Luke Joyner at the chicane. Bit of banging, but Neville holds on. He's just got to hold it on now at the final turn. He hasn't got the optimal line. And Joyner's going to have a good run out of the final turn. Sorry to cut you off there, Scruff. But
I don't know if I was saying something, and it was brilliant, and that was your loss.
Well, it certainly was, but that's his Gary Neville up to P3. But he's lost the back end at the first chicane. He's held onto it though, but it's allowed Luke Joyner back up the inside, and poor old Gary Neville. Well, I was going to say he'd have to do it again, but he's got the good run out of turn 3, and he's swooped back and taken it back. So good racing between these two with 4 laps to go.
Yeah, excellent racing there. As Brian Walsh gets himself a drive-through penalty, and that's what I was saying earlier. A single penalty for a couple of these guys, and that brings Ross right back in the fight for at least a few points, as Gary Neville gets a drive-through penalty
that's
as well.
Such a shame. He gets himself in the podium position and gets himself a penalty. But Walsh was, he had Coulston battling him. He just outbroke himself into the chicane. And, yeah, just got a little bit of a cut track. And that was it.
Bolger is around. Bruno in the lead. And by Bruno, I obviously mean Poiter. This is so amazing. I've forgotten his name.
Bolger, what has he done here? So we'll have a look.
Looks like he's had 2
the first chicane. It's claimed another victim. He's just... What is he? He's come in too hot. lost the back end and hasn't got back on the throttle again to straighten it out, and around he went. He hasn't got any damage, but well, dear oh dear, Steve Bolger has well, he cost himself a chance at a win in the first race by spinning at turn 3 on the second lap in the first race, and then obviously this time out 3 or 4 laps from home. Good 5-second lead. All he had to do was cruise to the finish, but that mistake at the first chicane has gifted Poiter the lead, and it will take some kind of miracle for him to claw that gap back.
That is good news for our championship leader Brendan Ross as well. If he can get a couple of points here, that's just, it's the best result he could hope for after the trouble he's had at this race.
Yeah, Ross has had his fair amount of troubles since taking the win in the first race. Obviously,
as he has Coops driving to the back of him.
well, he was behind Coops.
Yeah, he's been slowly catching him over a few laps.
And Glenn Miles is just up the road, and Glenn Miles just made a slight mistake. So Glenn Miles is only 4.5 seconds up the road. The problem for him though is that Ryan Walsh is 50 or so seconds in front.
Walsh does still have that penalty to serve.
No, he did serve it. I saw him in the background in one of the shots serving the penalty.
His car looks like a fat kid stuck in a lift. That would be Brian Walsh. Don't know why I said that bit in a professional tone after I just said fat kid stuck in a lift.
Well,
but as is the Rookies Cup.
His cheek. It looks like his cheeks are being squeezed a little bit there. So a bit of damage to both sides of the front end of the number 27 Mini.
Glenn Miles is all over the back of Coops here. That Thrustmaster wheel.
Miles must have made a mistake because he was in front of both him and.
Oh, Coops goes wide there and then comes back on for.
Oh, and that's right in front of Coulston too, and that's a penalty.
Miles with another penalty.
And that's a bit of contact there.
Coops has gone off in the final corner as well. Lucky. And
that's held up our race leader. So Miles probably should have taken it a bit easy and just let the car behind him go, but he blocked. I think it's Mike Coulston in the 70 car, and that's given Coulston a bit of damage, and a bit of that sort of helped Bolger a little bit.
The gap down to 3.6 seconds, so about 4 or 5 tenths through that final sector from what I can see.
That said, Bolger has to navigate this traffic himself.
I think Bolger's had another issue.
Yeah, oh, he's missing a wheel.
Bolger's off.
He's missing a wheel. Yeah. He's done it again, I'm going to assume, at the first chicane. He's lost the back end, and oh dear. So even when it looked like it was going to come up trumps, despite that mistake on the last lap, he has ripped his wheel off.
Trying to keep going, but I don't think he's going to have any luck getting that back to the pits as he's retired from the race. That would move Brendan Ross up into 10th place, scoring him a single point and extending his championship lead out to, I believe, 17 points.
And it looks like Bruno's out of fuel. Or is just driving very slowly. I don't know what he's doing. He got a bit of a push from... He's out of fuel. But he's gonna... No! Joyner wins! Joyner wins with 5 meters remaining. And Topher finishes in P3. So it's been an incredible ending. I don't know what has happened. He drove the entire race last time out and finished without having any problems with his fuel. He's obviously taken fuel out. And with 5... Well, probably less than that. Probably be 2 or 3 meters. Peter, 2 or 3 meters short from a race win. And... at the start of that last lap, we had Bolger in P2 DNF by crashing at the first chicane. So Joyner wins by... So he does the Steve Bradbury. Peter in P2 crawling across the line. Topher manages to finish P3. Turmo gets back to P4. Shane Witt P5. Gary Neville upset with himself. He should have been the one winning this race. He finishes in P6 due to his penalty. Whitmore finishes P7. Coulston P8. Bolger is classified 9th but did DNF. Brian Walsh did get the final point, so Ross didn't manage to get a point. And Coops P12 and Glenn Miles P13. So
it's obviously different with each series. Is that second place going to stand for Poiter there, not finishing under his own power, obviously?
I can't remember the exact, because it's different over various series. I can't remember if it's a rule if a driver has to finish to be classified points. So it has to be. That will be something we'll have to double check at a later point.
There's the one for Poiter and Bolger there. So this result is somewhat confusing.
Poiter crossed the line, so he's okay. But for Steve,
for some series we do have the under your own power.
Well, he crossed the start-finish line.
If your engine's out, then you're not really crossing the line under your own power.
No. He's fine because he crossed the start-finish line. And even if you are out of fuel at that stage, he crossed the start-finish line to finish the race. What we mean
you don't
by
actually get a push to make it there. Although he did actually get a push, so
yeah,
that
I don't know if it was
that one
could
be interesting. We'll have to look into that one later on.
Yeah, so an incredible finish, obviously, to both races, with Ross taking the lead with half a lap remaining in the first race, and then in the second race we had Bolger in P2, well, with a couple laps remaining, spin off at the first chicane, and then doing it again on the final lap and ripping a wheel off. So that pretty much ruined his championship hopes. If he had just finished in P2, he would have been a pretty decent spot. Would have closed the gap down to, I think, something like 6 seconds or 5 or 6 points. And instead, we'll have to go over the points to double check how that goes. But if he gets 9th, should he be classified there, he'll only gain 2 points and bring it back down to, I believe, 12. So
I have no words for that finish of the race.
So that was, and then obviously we had Peter run out of fuel, and he did get helped to out of the last corner by one of the orange minis. I don't know if it was Mike Coulston or I can't remember who the other one is.
I'd assumed we only had one. So
no, it was Mike Coulston because Luke Joyner obviously passed him pretty much 2 or 3 meters before the start-finish line. So Peter lucky to finish in P2, lucky to finish at all, to be honest. And then obviously, Gary Neville could have been in that position, had a drive-through earlier, a couple laps earlier. So it's just an absolutely, completely random finish to that race. Well, that's motor racing for you, I guess.
Yeah, we often will ask each other predictions for races, and I'm glad that we didn't tonight because we both would have been incredibly wrong.
I'm pretty sure the bookies would have been quite happy taking everybody's money with 6 laps to go. So bit of a crazy one. We've been joined by half the field in TV time, but we'll reserve it now to, I think we'll go to Rossi first. Obviously, the first race didn't qualify so well, Rossi, but you had a decent amount of pace in there, and then obviously once Bolger obviously made his error on the second lap, you found yourself battling for the lead, and then obviously on the last lap, taking it right at the death.
Yeah, so I went into that race thinking I had no hope of winning that race. So I was just hoping to tag on the back of Bolger and Poiter. But that Steve been really helped me for the championship, and surprisingly, I had the pace for Peter, so I was able to sort of slowly climb him right to that very last lap. So I can't wait to watch that back. But that was a good race.
Well, it looked like with 2 laps to go in that first race that there was a little bit of a gap opened up, and it looked like it was probably a little bit unlikely you'd make a move on him. Did he make an error for you to get a good run on him on that final lap? I'm
not too sure. I did see it open, and then coming to where you hug the wall, I think it's turn 4, he really slowed up. So I assumed it might have been a fuel issue, but yet to hear about that. But yeah, that sort of gave me the run through the S's down to the back straight, and we both dragged down to the hairpin.
Yeah, and then obviously the second race, well, it didn't get off to a great start prior to qualifying, and during qualifying
No.
with the random Automobilista errors that you happened to get. But you got onto the grid, starting at the back, you work your way up a couple spots, and then it all just fell apart for you.
Yeah, so that was a toughie one. I'd got to watch that back before I comment on it, but yeah, that was just frustrating. There was positions that I could have had, positions that I lost, but yeah, it's probably just lucky of hearing that Bulger's crashed out, so that's probably worked in my favour a bit. But yeah, that's heartbreaking.
Well, if it is any consolation, I suppose, for your own championship ambitions, obviously Bolger on that last lap did have that problem, but yeah, as you said, looked like a very frustrating second race for you.
Yeah, so yeah, nothing went my way.
That said, you did extend your lead in the championship this round, so it's not all bad for you. So you'll be hoping to obviously iron out a couple of the issues you've had in the second races, the past two rounds, going into the final round in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, so we're going to make the most of race 1, build that to a 15-point lead, and then whatever happens in race 2 is history.
Yep. Well, I think we'll cut to Bolger. I think obviously pole position in both races. You finally got the first lap and start right in the first race, and then you threw it away on the second lap this time, and then it looked like you had a decent strategy that got you back up to the field, but at the end of the first race, you just didn't have the tyres to sort of compete with Poiter and Rossi in front of you.
No, at the end of the first race, it was about just trying to stay in touch with the boys and make up a couple of spots, but only if they took each other out was I in with a hope. But yeah, sitting here with both feet riddled with bullet holes at the moment, all for my own doing.
Yeah, a bit of a heartbreaker, that second one. Obviously, once again, starting at the front, and you're leading quite comfortably after, obviously, Poiter and I'm trying to think who it is now, but I think it was, yeah, obviously second and third had a little bit of a coming together. You had a nice comfortable lead, and obviously after the pit stops, the gap did come down a little bit, but you still had 5 or so seconds, and then you had that first spin at the chicane, and then obviously the one on the last lap. Did you just perhaps even take it a little bit too easy into the final chicane, or just outbrake yourself?
Absolutely. I just thought as soon as I got stopped driving through those corners and the back got too loose going through that chicane, and then yeah, both spins were just cruising because I was pretty comfortable in front, and then yeah, so I just lost it a little bit on the coming through the first piece, and then it swapped ends.
Yeah, obviously it is a feature on front-wheel drives that you get off the throttle a little bit, and they do tend to start to turn a little bit more, and obviously that's what's caught you out both times. But we did see a lot of people do that, not only here in the Rookie Cup, but when we did hold the touring cars, we had a number of accidents through that first chicane. It's not as easy as it looks.
The sausage curbs, you have to use them to get a good time, be pretty quick, and then when you try and lift off and avoid them, you put a bit more movement in the car, and then it gets a little less stable.
Yeah, but obviously, once again, if there is any consolation, obviously you did have, once again, the pace in qualifying and throughout the races to get some good results. It's just about now just ironing out those issues that prevent you from taking some good results and wins.
Yeah, it's a shame. I felt very comfortable at this track pace-wise, so whatever will be, it'll be. We'll see how we go at Interlagos.
Yeah, so we do hope you the best at Interlagos. Hopefully you can make it an exciting finish for us in the broadcast room.
Well, if we get meteorites hitting Rossi's house in a bit more frequency, we might might have a chance.
All right. Well, thanks, Steve, and obviously good luck at Interlagos.
Thanks, boys.
So I think we'll go to Fernando Bruno / Poiter, obviously winner. Well, no, he wasn't winner. He ran out of fuel on the last lap there. So I think we'll just call you Fernando this time out. What happened there in that second race? Obviously, you made it to the end in obviously the first race, but obviously couldn't hold Rossi behind you. So did you make an error in that first race to allow Rossi to close back in, or was it just you taking a little bit easy and you took it too easy and it lost you that position?
Yeah, exactly that, Louis. The second option. I hate this track. Hate this track. It's not my style, and I decide to get better on that track. And I practice a lot, but even though I still hate it, and yeah, I was too conservative on the last 6 laps. Actually, the whole first race was too conservative, and I kind of made a mistake. Not exactly a mistake. I was saving tires. Rossi was faster and faster, and he gets it. He was smarter. Beautiful. It was a beautiful maneuver. I tried to make the X on him, but yeah,
It was
it
too
was
late.
yeah, too late.
And then obviously in that second race, did you take any fuel out prior to that? Because, well, obviously you did have a few battles throughout the race, and after I think you got touched on the back by Terma. I don't think he meant it. He just outbroke himself a little bit. But you got yourself, you clawed 5 seconds back during the pit stop sequence, and then found yourself in the lead. So did you just take any fuel out for the second race and ran out of fuel, or did you run the same fuel but just used the same, or just used a little bit more in that second race?
No, I was stupid. That was a mistake, a completely mistake. Um, I always put 22 liters for practicing, and I forgot to put 25 this time. Yeah, it was a mistake. But even I don't believe I couldn't make better than that. I mean, that's not my style. This track is too dangerous. If you make a mistake, and I was involved on a accident on the second race. I don't know what happened exactly. I think someone tried to overtake me on the left side. And yeah, I spun, and then it was 10 seconds. Bolger was like 10 seconds ahead. I gave up the race. But yeah, lucky, and yeah.
Well, despite that, obviously, you say it didn't suit your driving style and you didn't like it at all. Still, you had two solid results. Obviously, you were half a lap away in race one from taking the win, and you were, well, 5 meters, if that, in the second race there. So not too bad at all.
Yeah, that was lucky. Yeah.
But obviously, sort of commiserations, but also well done on two results on tracks that you say don't suit you too well.
Well done on the event, man. This event is great, great, great. Well done, and thanks for that.
That's right. Thanks for coming along and enjoying yourself. So we'll just jump over to Luke. Obviously, unexpected race winner there in the second race. You're sort of in the midfield for most of that race, and then as the race went on, and especially towards the end, you found yourself in a podium spot, and then you found yourself on the last lap in the lead with well, you led all but 2 meters.
Yeah, starting ninth, I think. Um, yeah, I had no idea how I ended up in third, and then yeah, gifted the win pretty much.
Well, it's not about how much you lead, I suppose. It's when you lead, and well, you led at the most important time, and that was for what wouldn't have even been a second.
Yeah. I'll take it. Thanks for getting out of my way.
But obviously, congratulations, our race 2 winner. So I think we'll just leave it there for the interviews, even though there is a few guys in here. So I do apologise for obviously cutting a few guys off. But obviously, once again, thanks all those that did obviously watch the stream, and once again, thanks to everyone that does participate in these Rookie Cup, well, in all the AMS Oz series. But the rookies today certainly put on a bit of a show. I think you'd agree there, Scruff. Some bit of well, some interesting driving, a bit of heartbreak, and well, just all-round craziness. I think in that second race as well.
Yeah, there's a lot to take away from that second race, and it's hard to really know where to start, other than the fact that coming into the final round, we do have less than a race win worth of points between our championship leaders. So all to play for coming to the last round, and I look forward to seeing that one play out.
Well, certainly. Well, we did say during the broadcast that you should just keep going because you never know what might happen. And, well, we saw it in full effect in the last lap there tonight in the second race. So just a word of the upcoming events. On Thursday, I do believe we have the Super Series returning scruff. I'm just going off the top of my head.
I do believe that there was a practice session for that
Yes.
today, so I can only assume that that's the next Thursday round.
Yep, I'm just having a look right now. So we've got the Super Series in the Mitsubishi Lancers coming up on Thursday night at Eastern Creek / Sydney Motorsport Park. That will be with ARW TV. And then on Sunday, we have the WEC returning. And this will be the 2 hours of Shanghai. So no 90 minutes this time. Straight into 2 hours. That'll be a very, very interesting event. How strategies will play out there. And then obviously next Monday, we have the pre-season test for Season 2 of the Automobilista Australia Touring Car Championship. So for those that do want to participate in Season 2, we would like to see you there. Obviously, there's one or two things that we would like to test out before we obviously think about implementing them into the obviously Season 2 rules. One of them, or mainly being the introduction of a compulsory pit stop for the round. So a driver would have to pit in, well, they've got a choice to pit in either race, but they have to make a pit stop in one of them. And there will obviously be a pit window between lap 2 and probably you got to pit with, say, 2 minutes or earlier to go. So that will be tested out, and hopefully we do see some more skins sent in so I can put the pack all together. I believe I've only received 4 or 5 at the moment, so I do hope to see a few more of them. And just a reminder to obviously sign up on the live races page. Information can be found on Discord and I believe on Facebook as well to do that. So we do hope to see you there. Obviously, Thursday once again being the Super Series, Sunday being WEC at Shanghai, and pre-season touring cars next Monday night. So we hope to see you there. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's racing. Thank you very much.